Why, hello. It is time for a little Technique Tuesday. I like to talk about some simple technique or tutorial, related to art mostly, and explain, what it is, what it's called, why you use it, demonstrate it. So if you're curious to know about continental or German knitting, as it's called sometimes, or European actually as well, then stay tuned. I'm Aradia. I'm your resident witch and creatrix over to Radia's Hand and Danae's Divine, where I create myth, magic, and meaning for your everyday life through art, intuition, and energy work. And we're going to talk about a style of knitting. So I want to clarify something first. There are styles of knitting and there are methods of knitting. A lot of people are familiar with style. The style of knitting refers to how you hold the yarn. The method of knitting refers to the way in which the stitches are worked and how the yarn is wrapped. So this video is only about knitting style, and we're going to talk about one specific one. I'll make another video on English. It's also called, I think, American, French. There's another name, I think. And then we'll also go through some other additional types that are less common as we go along. So, there's not really a reason to use this over another way. Whatever way is comfortable for you to hold your needles and yarn, that's the way you should do it. Some people have very firm ideas about why you should or shouldn't do something, and the way I approach it is whatever works for you. Now, it is definitely worth knowing more than one knitting style because of where the stress is placed on your hands. And if you're knitting for long stretches of time, or you're doing a lot of purling, and there's knitting styles that purling is easier in or more difficult for some people. There's also the concept of speed. Some people want to speed knit as fast as possible, which is, I fall in that category. And then there's people who are like, no, this is a leisurely activity, this is fun, this is a hobby, this is something I want to do slowly and enjoy, which I find very admirable and awesome. Power to you. I want to get my project done so I can wear it and so I can start another one, because that's how I celebrate the finished projects, is by starting another one. When I started out, I naturally started knitting in this fashion. One thing I will say is a lot of people will knit continental if they crocheted before, because of how the yarn is held when you crochet. It's generally held in your non-dominant hand along with the work itself. And so this is an easier transition. Surveying and observing other knitters, a lot of knitters actually knit in the other fashion, which I think I've tried it before and it's still a little awkward for me to do. So to get started, what you'll need is needles that match your yarn, your project, whatever it calls for, and then yarn. This yarn is a kitchen cotton. It is in the color Tea Rose. It is by Lily Sugar and Cream. And part of the reason I chose this yarn is because cotton has a wonderful stitch definition, and so it's really easy to see the finished product and what it looks like. So, one final thing that I would like to express is there are some peculiarities. Mouth doesn't want to say that word lately, to how I knit, and these are not necessarily quirks that you'll find everyone using, or even that many people using, but they are natural tendencies that I developed while I was knitting that work for me, and so I go with them. And guess what? I use them and I create fabric, so it works. And again, a final reminder, we are talking about styles versus methods. Methods discuss more how the stitches are formed and the direction of the yarn wrapping, so we'll cover that in another video. Okay. And I'll probably try to do each of the methods with each so you can see how they look. So, because this is my cast on edge, I'm working this piece. Actually, I'm working this piece for a specific reason. So we're going to do a 2x2 rib. It's 10 stitches cast on. If you saw my long tail cast on video, this will look familiar. I have turned the yarn tail into a butterfly, so it's out of the way. And so here we go. So the big thing is you hold the working yarn in your non-dominant hand. A lot of people hold tension in different ways. Tension isn't necessarily discussed as part of your knitting style, but you do need to hold tension, because if you just let it flop, you know, it's going to be loose and your stitches aren't going to be nice and even and neat, and you don't want that. So holding tension is important. I, again, hold tension very simply. I let my left index finger basically do all the work, and then the rest of my fingers are just have a loose hold around it. There are some people who like to wrap it around multiple fingers or the pinkies. I actually don't do well with that, so I don't. So again, do whatever works for you. And one of the peculiarities of the way I knit, you'll see the use of my left index finger actually makes ribbing a lot easier and switching between knits and purls a lot easier. So here we go. And this is, generally speaking, this is slower than I knit, and I'm doing this so that you can clearly see what I'm doing. And because I've got a loose hold on my yarn, it is, it's just sliding through my fingers. I don't have to worry about anything. I feel like I messed something up here. Something looks weird. So we've got our knits, our purls, our knits, our purls, and knits. Okay, I didn't. Oh, I see what happened. Okay, so there you go. You got your first row, and like I said, I'm not knitting to speed. We'll see if I can get up to that point in the video in like a row or two, so you can see the difference in what it looks like demonstrated, and then how quickly it can go. But again, if you were paying attention, you saw that it was easy for me to switch between knits and purls because my index finger was doing so much of the work. That means instead of having to take my hand off the knitting and move it around, I was able to just switch my finger over the needle or behind it as needed. And I did not start off doing that, and actually nobody taught me how to do that. I noticed it. I was actually doing a lot of seed stitch and a lot of ribbing, and I love seed stitch, but a lot of people don't like seed stitch or moss stitch, which is not exactly the same as seed stitch. They are different, because there's a lot of switching back and forth, and it can just be awkward. So there we go. You can see our little ribbing taking form. Look at it, it's adorable. And we're gonna try to move up to speed now and do two more rows, and I'll go from there. Uh-oh. Hold on one second. Oh, my apologies. So here we are back. Back to knit up to speed. So you can see what that looks like. And it doesn't matter how fast or slow you knit. As long as you form your stitches correctly, you'll get the same result fabric. And that's what we want. We want a finished object. And the other hallmark of this is because the yarn is held in your non-dominant hand, whenever you're getting the yarn into the needle, you are picking it. Now, obviously, this is a little more obvious when you knit. So you can see I picked it up. And the term picking is in contrast to what you see with English knitting, which is called throwing, and that's because you're holding the yarn in your dominant hand, and so to get the yarn around the needle you have to throw it around. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people feel that this is a quicker way to work. We don't usually have tractor trailers come down here, which I'm not upset about. So there you go. We've got 4 rows and this nice little ribbing. It looks real good. All of our knits are nice and neat. You know, this one's a little wonky, but it's because the yarn's split. That's okay. So there you go. You've seen demo mode and done about to speed. And that is knitting in the Continental, European, or German style. So if you have any questions about other knitting methods or knitting styles, I would love to hear from you below. And as I add more videos to this channel, I will link relevant videos in other descriptions that are related. So I'll put the English or American style video here, Portuguese when we get to it, and so on and so forth. And because they're related, I probably will also put the knitting methods in here as well. So I hope you have a wonderful day and happy knitting.